Hello, my name is Mia Blatt, and I will be talking about the informal recycling of used lead-acid batteries, or ULABs, in Agbogbloshie, Ghana. I will talk about the e-waste dumping site in Ghana, the ULAB recycling process and background information, and the proposed interventions from working professionals in different fields on how to navigate the problems from this practice. Agbogbloshie is a large e-waste dump site in Accra, Ghana, where informal recycling of ULABs occurs. The informal recycling process is the source of pollution, and it contaminates the environment, families, and communities around the recycling sites. The practice of informal ULAB recycling happens in almost every low and middle income country. Also, children and families play and work in these areas. The Smithsonian Magazine states that according to the United Nations Environment Program, 85% of the e-waste dumped in Ghana and other parts of West Africa is produced in Ghana and West Africa. So, in other words, ending the export of used electronics from the wealthy developed world won't end the burning in Agbogbloshie. The solution must come from West Africa itself, and the people who depend upon this practice to make a living. In their backyards and e-waste sites, people will take batteries and take an axe to them. They will rip open the top of the lead-acid batteries, dump out the acid onto the ground, remove the plates, and then melt them down in an open furnace or open fire. The process releases lead dust into the air, soil, and environment, and it is particularly dangerous to children and people in the residential areas nearby. The informal recycling process contaminates families and communities, causing severe health problems from lead exposure, especially among exposed children. Lead-acid batteries are in every motor vehicle. A single battery can contain up to 10 kilograms or 22 pounds of lead. The going price for lead is about $1 per pound, so this business can generate lots of money, making the desire to recycle very high. In low and middle income countries, a battery equates to sustenance. To put a statistic on this issue, 1 in every 3 children are affected by lead poisoning globally, according to Pure Earth. Also, informal ULAB recycling is the #1 pollution source in the world. It is prevalent in low and middle income countries because lead is valuable, and the process of removing the lead from these batteries and melting it back into bars to sell to battery manufacturers is a job that doesn't require any specialized education or training. In many cases, this is done out of subsistence, where this may be their only source of income for feeding their families. The people are not aware of the risks being created, so it makes sense to them to do this work. There have been cleanup efforts in public-private relationships which have helped reduce lead exposure sources from the environment and have led to reduced blood lead levels in children, according to Pure Earth. The CDC states there is no safe level of lead in children. Lead exposure is a big threat to people living in these communities. Lead affects almost every system in the body. The exposure pathways could include inhalation, ingestion, handling of lead-containing products, and from polluted food and water sources. Lead exposure is a particular concern among children because they are more susceptible to lead poisoning due to playing in the contaminated soil and environment, and it can affect them more compared to adults as they are still developing. Lead exposure and poisoning could lead to developmental and growth delays, cognitive impairments, behavioral problems, nausea, and headaches. High blood lead levels and lead poisoning in children can affect their IQs, memory, and create other health problems, and could lead to permanent brain damage. In an effort to reduce the dangers of informal ULAB recycling, Chris, a corporate development analyst at MyOrthos, suggests that developed countries and their global outreach groups, such as UNICEF, Pure Earth, and other humanitarian groups, set up battery drop-off spots where they would provide a monetary incentive for individuals in this community to turn in the batteries as opposed to smelting them in their own backyards in communities. The incentive would amount to the lead value minus any estimated conversion costs. These groups could then move those batteries to a recycling plant where they can be broken down and smelted correctly. In order to lessen the harmful effects, Eliana, a grade school teacher, suggests working with the governments and NGOs to find alternate safe and sustainable safety measures as a means of controlling the community-wide pollution from smelting, or by providing the community with protective equipment to try to create a barrier between the environment and workers. She also suggests working with governments and NGOs to educate the community about the harmful effects of lead exposure and create programs to help contain the environmental contaminants and the upkeep of the cleanup of the pollutants in the environment, including members of the community. Because informal ULAB recycling will likely continue even with introduction of other means of income because of its profitability, she also suggests working with humanitarian organizations to train and provide necessary resources for ethically and ecologically disposing of waste and containing airborne pollutants. Meredith, a senior communications specialist at Residio, suggests creating communication between nonprofits and communities to educate the residents about the harmful effects of lead poisoning. She also suggests raising grant funds to create new work opportunities for residents. Lastly, she suggests working with governments to create open communication networks about public health problems and messaging, and to put in place policies that will restrict the ease of ULAB recycling practices. She continued to talk about how on a country and community level, knowledge, awareness, and access to opportunity are key to ensuring that local communities are aware of the harmful effects of lead poisoning from this practice. The most important way to reduce lead poisoning from these activities is making sure people can connect the harmful effects to the activity itself and to the negative impact it has on what they value most, their family, their health, and their livelihood. To see the tangible effects and to hear about them in an approachable way will create widespread understanding. She also said that you must also replace the activity with something that is more beneficial and profitable to individuals, especially if families are relying on this activity for their short-term and long-term livelihoods. Struggling families are looking to care for their loved ones, but knowing that this activity could put them in harm's way demonstrates that there needs to be other options for providing for families. While approach number 1 would not be a perfectly break-even process for the outreach groups, it would greatly reduce the operating cost for this initiative and provide the surrounding communities with the income they desperately need. Considerations for a plan like this would include ensuring that the battery still had the lead inside and that the lead content could be accurately measured. Also, it is to ensure safe recycling stations are within a cost-efficient shipping distance. With approach number 2, this can remain sustainable and provide added jobs by training members of the community to work in oversight and safety equipment distribution. With approach number 3, the country itself should have a strong stance on ULABs. If banning ULABs is not the best option, then there needs to be restrictive measures that make it difficult for ULABs to operate in countries, such as high taxes, factory and building permits and restrictions, legal barriers, policies, and fines. Also, if they raise grant funds to create work opportunities that are more profitable for families, then there would be no need to participate in informal ULAB recycling. If communities are saturated with other options for work, it will reduce the number of individuals participating in this practice. The main commonalities in the approaches from these professionals included creating a government humanitarian group partnership, education and training if they are to continue this practice, some kind of monetary incentive or raising grant funds, and creating awareness and opportunity for residents in the community. Lastly, it is important to get an interprofessional team together to address health problems, as many perspectives can culminate in a more comprehensive solution. Thank you for taking the time to learn about the informal ULAB recycling practice occurring around the world in low and middle income countries.